honestly, but I like it better, so I'm going to use this. But this is also something that also goes by the name of the T-shaped skills model or learning model. And the basic premise is that you have a broad level of experience and skill set that you might not be like a super expert in, but you just have that awareness and know-how. And then you have one deep area of expertise. And we'll get into more of that later. Okay. All right. Dr. Chung requested of me to incorporate AI into my talk. So I've just included a few slides up front here as the malicious compliance to his request, just about AI and my interactions with it. If you read my bio, you know that I don't have that much AI experience in my resume, but there are certainly times that I have to interact with it and things that we do at my current company for it. So I've linked here. I'll provide these slides to Kina and she can share them out. But there's a link in the slide notes here for an article that for a Q&A with our senior architect of AI at our company. She's kind of the thought leader at our company of how we deal with AI. But I also want to make the point that we've been doing AI at our company for years. So the recent trend or hype or whatever you want to call it around the generative AI scene, that's one thing. But we've been doing AI and various applications of it in our company for a long time now, and just not having been labeling it as this kind of AI product. So here's an example there. I know it's kind of a tiny text, but we've already been using machine learning to sift through tens of millions of faxes that we get electronically to attach them to the right patient health records. But also there's another great example that I'm familiar with that I have colleagues that are working on. And here's a picture of our Belfast office in Maine. We offer a product at our company where instead of, for a doctor, if you have a practice, you can imagine that handling insurance claims is a quite tedious process where you have to interact with the insurance company, which is usually a third-party entity that's not associated with your practice. You have to send in a mail or often like a paper form, like detailing what the service was, what the medical procedures were, and making sure you have all the right codes in there, and making sure that the patient is even eligible for that service. So there's this very complicated rule system that has to be in play to even know if a patient is covered. And oftentimes, you don't even get it right the first time, and the claims get rejected and sent back, and then you have to tweak it to get the right things in place and then send it in again. So we offer this service where you just set your insurance claims processing mail to our address, which is this address in Maine. They send all the mail for this insurance claims related work to this place where we actually have people manually opening these envelopes, taking them one by one, and doing this kind of data entry for these insurance claims into our system. Once they're into our system, then we have this programmatic way of applying our rules engine to them to figure out how to most effectively apply these insurance claims. You can imagine that there's a very highly manual process here. There's application of natural language processing and image recognition and machine learning to straight up just read these documents. You just scan them in right away, and then our AI system will know how to apply the right claims to them. And this has proven to be even more correct than human readers, and you can also imagine that that's a lot more effective or efficient, I should say, than people sifting through the mail. All right, and then just to kind of bring it all together to the current trends of how we're working towards generative AI. I mean, you can't run a tech company these days and not have some kind of story about what you're doing at your company with generative AI to stay competitive. So these are just a few examples of the current projects and things that are being in the works for how we're applying generative AI to the athenahealth product. You can see here like EHR patient record summarization. You might have this like large chart of patient data that's not very human readable, honestly. Maybe to a doctor, if they skim it, they might have some idea of what is in there. But why not just throw that into a Gen AI system, and then let them spit out a nice summary of what are the salient points in there and what are the most irregular things that require the most attention. We have a patient portal offering as well, where it is a patient-facing system where providers can send messages to the patients and and lab results and that kind of nature. I'm sure if any of you have used some kind of website or portal or an app to interact with your healthcare provider, you also have interacted with some sort of patient portal of this nature. You can imagine, like, there's so much communication and just like writing emails or what have you, that these doctors have to draft all these different responses to different patients. Gen AI is really good at this, of creating this kind of templated structure of communication, and at least giving you this basic structure of the draft, where then the doctor can kind of fix the mistakes that the AI made and put in whatever other insights that they might have or information that they want to provide the patient. But that could be a huge time saver for doctors. Prior authorization completeness. This is something I was kind of mentioning before about making sure that even before we send in the claim to the insurance company, that the authorization is in order and we have all the right codes in place. And then the last bullet, this is the much more closer to where I am, which is that we are also heavily leveraging AI coding assistance, namely Codium, into our daily software development lifecycle process. So there are a lot of menial programming tasks these days that, like, this generative AI technology is really good for. For example, generating code documentation, generating unit tests, maybe parsing one encoding of a data set into another encoding. Like, this is the kind of stuff that we in the past have just like copy pasted existing code into an area and then just kind of tweak it to make it work. Well, Codium and other AI coding assistants can do this like very, very well. It's not so good at being like just giving it some product requirements, some business level English requirements, and then saying like spit me out a whole working web application. Like, that's a little bit more dubious. But once you have some specific discrete chunks of like, I want this kind of input to become this kind of output, the coding assistants are very powerful for that. Okay, so this is where we first touch base back to our Taproot system. You see here in one of these side routes, I put in Codium, because this is actually a fairly recent development at athenahealth, and I'm still learning how to use this and interact with this. My first 10 years of my programming experience did not use this kind of powerful AI coding assistant. Sure, like we had IDEs that have some code suggestion tools and like autocomplete. You might type out a variable name and it might tell you what they think the variable should be, but I would not consider that AI. And so using these coding AI coding assistants, they literally just, like, if you've ever used ChatGPT or any other code or generative AI tool on the web, it just gives you a prompt, and then what you type in a prompt, you can even type in a whole English sentence and it'll spit something out. These coding assistants work in the same manner, where you can type in a prompt, spit some code out. You can even further refine that, say like, okay, I don't want this part of the code to be this, or I need to update that thing to be this other thing. And it will take that and it can further refine that. And so this is where I want to pause and say that I want to point out that some of these roots grow organically. So, they implemented this Codium at my workplace. I kind of got benefit of that. It's already there. I don't have to go out there and intentionally learn this. And so that skill set is growing on me somewhat organically, just from the benefit of working my day-to-day. However, the Taproot, which we'll get into more as I go on through this, needs to be a little bit more intentional. You have to pick something that you're going to say, plant your flag and say, okay, I'm going to be an expert in this area. I'm going to grow my expertise in this area intentionally. I might take some classes or do some tutorials online on my own to understand this better. I might seek out these kind of projects in my education or in my job workplace to further my expertise in that area. So I want to just say that if you get nothing else from this presentation but this one key idea, it's that you have to be very intentional about what your roots are and which one is your taproot. So I'm just going to say that one again. You have to be very intentional about what your roots are here and which one is your taproot. That is the key point of this whole presentation. Okay, and then I guess I'll just to close the loop on the AI slides, and a bit before I move on, if I was sitting on the other side of this presentation, I'd have one burning question of, is this generative AI, is this code producing AI eventually just going to take our jobs, basically replace the need for a software engineer in the industry? And I will say that I think there definitely are parts of a traditional programmer's day-to-day job description that will be phased out. But I'd argue that's already happening even before generative AI with outsourcing to cheaper tech labor overseas. I mean, like the salary cost of some of the outsourcing personnel is just insane. Like there's no that's already a ship it's sailed. That train has left the station. So, but as far as software engineering on the state side here, I think the engineers that are able to utilize these new tools to accelerate development and generate new business value will be more competitive and certainly still very valuable to any given business. And there's going to certainly be an evolution of the industry of what a software engineer's job is going to be going forward. And I'm not totally qualified to have a total intelligent opinion about what that future state might look like. But I think that being aware of that and how you can incorporate that as one of your roots is something that can definitely help inform you of where you invest your time and energy in cultivating your Taproot system here. All right, so going all the way back to the beginning. This is in 2014. I'm sure you recognize the gentleman in the middle there. That's Dr. Chung. He was my graduate school advisor when I was doing a master's program in computer science at the time. And as Maura mentioned, I was in a cybersecurity focused program, where it's a scholarship-based program where, in addition to doing a master's in science and computer science, we also had to do an additional set of coursework and activities related to information security and cybersecurity. I didn't know it at the time, but that's where the beginning of my Taproot is starting to grow, which is in this area of cybersecurity. I got into computer science thinking I just wanted to be a programmer and a software developer and make a good living. But in this scholarship program, I gained a set of skills that will eventually prove out to be kind of my central skill set here. So my first job out of master's program there was working at the MITRE Corporation. And they do a lot of different things, but this is the government organization that I was mentioning earlier. They're technically not part of the government. They're known as a federally funded research and development center, FFRDCs. I joined a very highly specialized team that worked on online identity access management. I was very involved in the standards development as well as open source code contributions to this online identity access management, or otherwise known as IAM ecosystem. I had the benefit of working with my project manager and senior engineer, Justin Richer, was very involved in developing a lot of these initial protocols at the time. And one of my proudest accomplishments in my whole career, and despite this being so long ago, is that I have my name in one of these IETF RFCs. If you're familiar with what RFCs are, they are the protocols that govern how the whole internet works. These days, almost every website that you go to, you can log in with your Apple ID or your Google account or Microsoft account or what have you with a single sign-on. But 10 years ago, that was not the case. You'd have to maintain a separate username and password for just about everything. And this is part of the genesis of bringing this unified ecosystem of how do you do all this kind of SSO stuff across the web. And I got my foot in the door with that because of that initial cybersecurity Taproot experience in my education. While working at the MITRE Corporation and working in the IAM space, I started to grow my Taproot there, specifically in the OAuth OIDC. OIDC stands for OpenID Connect protocols. And the platform we used to develop these prototype systems that we worked on was the Java Spring framework. So that also started to be something that I developed. That's a side route. At the time, I thought that was my main skill, was working on Java, but we'll see how that goes here. Actually, one more thing about the Java Spring framework there. I was working at MITRE for 2 years. After 2 years working there, I ran into some programming challenge, and Google and Stack Overflow were not helping me find the answer of the thing I needed to try to figure out for the issue I was encountering in the Java Spring programming. I looked up in the intranet of the company to see if there was any other Java Spring engineers that I could ask the question to, and I discovered that I was the expert of Java Spring framework in the company after 2 years, having been the person to have basically worked on it the longest. So you never know when you're going to become that expert in your area, or that becomes one of your main root systems. But I think if you're more cognizant and more intentional about that could be less of a surprise and more of an intentional a positive for your career development. Okay, so that brings me to where I'm currently employed at, which is the Athena Health company. I have a little just blurb from the marketing team on our homepage of our website there of what we do. I first started working there in a platform services team, which is more related to that connect the ecosystem part of this blurb. And 3 years ago, I moved teams to the clinical. We call ourselves the Athena Clinicals, and this is much more of the doctor-facing EHR system where they document their patient care into our system. Okay, so this is where I think I want to pause and say that I made this career move not because I was not happy in where I previously was. A recruiter reached out to me from Athena Health specifically because of my background earlier here, and I joined another very specialized team in identity access management in Athena Health. So I only mentioned that because it's because of this taproot that I have in the IAM space and familiarity with these protocols that basically I was a shoo-in for this job. And it's not because I crushed the interview against 100 other qualified candidates. Like there were many other applicants, but none of them had this background in this IAM space. None of them could have that interview process where they could speak about experience of already working in this space and their development experience and being knowledgeable about these protocols. So you don't have to know about IAM, but if you imagine that you're just a generalist software engineer and your resume has just a list of some programming languages in there that you're familiar with, some projects that you might have worked on, and your resume is going to look the very same as all the other applicants for any given software engineering job, and it's going to be very hard to rise above the crowd there. And so this is one of the key drivers, or I guess the benefits of the Taproot model, is if you can demonstrate that you do have this expertise, even if the job you're applying for isn't necessarily exactly in that domain, the fact that you can demonstrate that you can achieve some expertise in an area, I think it goes a long ways, especially when you're doing your interview process and kind of doing more of the interpersonal interviews where you can talk about that experience and how you develop the expertise and how you provide value from that. That is a critical part of career growth and development there. Athena Health started off its web platform in Perl. So funny enough, when I started working there, that just, again, to the organic nature of how sometimes the roots grow, that Perl became one of my side roots. And we also develop a set of microservices in AWS using Node.js web servers. So also I learned some Node.js and cloud computing. Because we're operating at production scale here, we also using industry standards of containerization using Docker and clustering using ECS. So these are also things that I can now note on my resume, and if questioned about in an interview or even just for another junior engineer trying to learn this or what have you, I can speak to those things. And Sure, I can maybe this talk could have been much more esoteric discussion about OIDC and OAuth and things like of that nature, but I'm not sure that that would have been as helpful for you all than just kind of this more broader sense of what I think is more important for career development. Did not do much Java Spring framework development there, so that's just that route kind of stayed the same size there, but I did learn some of these other things along the way in that team. And then halfway through this, my tenure at Athena Health so far, I joined the Athena Clinicals team. Here's some marketing material there. So this is a lot less security focused. This is much more user experience based. Again, it's the doctor facing application of helping them enter their clinical data and their documentation about their patients. And in that experience, I may have not been doing so much identity IAM work, instead doing so much more front-end development, and now my React.js skills have grown there. And then I've also pushed the Java Spring Framework route out more because, funny enough, when my first job, I was working Java Spring Framework, and at the time it was Java version 8. And like I mentioned earlier, I put that down to learn these other things. And now in my current role, we're doing Java Spring Framework again. And now it's Java 23 or something like that. So you never know when one of these experiences on the broad and wide spectrum of your skill set will come into play. And it's not that I don't ever do any of this OAuth OIDC stuff anymore. In our internal ecosystem of applications, we actually use these identity services frameworks in order for these apps to talk securely to each other. So having this experience in these security models helped me progress my career, becoming more of a senior engineer, thinking more of these architectural big picture type of things. All of these things come into play there and help me with that career progression. All right, and with that, I'm going to just do one more here, sharing some kid stuff. That's my kid putting in a 1-footer there. And yeah, that's the end of my presentation. And thank you all for having me. And I guess we can open it up to questions here.
Thank you, Ram, for the value insight. So now we can open for questions. I think
I guess.
Noah wanna say something.
Okay.
Or Clark.
Yeah, I do have like a question. Like you started with the different like recession, depression, tech layoffs, right? I'm curious, how was it in the because you're working at the health sector essentially, right? So what was the feel like being a tech worker there, or like your peers in the medical industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where your mileage will vary greatly depending on where you work. My understanding of the situation is that when COVID was starting to die down, a lot of tech companies got very ambitious with hiring again, anticipating the bounce back of the economy ahead of schedule and making sure that they have the personnel in place. When the economy did not recover to the levels that were anticipated by business analysts and what have you, well, the companies are not making as much money as they thought they were going to be, but they have to pay all these employees that they just hired. So that the bottom line is not looking good, and that's hence why they're having to readjust for this. My company, thankfully, I mean, I credit this a lot to our leadership, did not go so far to expand hiring by the same amounts that I think some of these other companies did. And so we've been able to, by and large, avoid some of these having to do some of that painful layoffs things. But I will also say, though, that when layoffs occur, do you want to be the person who's replaceable, or do you want to be the person that is the person that one person in your team that knows the thing, is the expert in the thing, has the taproot, and is not replaceable? Those people, you can't fire those kind of people or lay off those people from the company, regardless of how bad things are going, unless you're planning on closing up the company for good. So this is something that I still think that regardless of what the economic climate is, if you make yourself competitive with your skill set, it can help your job security a lot more.
Oh, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because I'm one of those that got laid off with the tech boom. Yeah.
Yes, Morgan.
William, I've got to remember what the question was. Okay, so you mentioned having something to talk about. All right, there were two things. You really distinguish yourself in the interview about having something valuable to talk about with, the extra courses. I'm trying to remember if when you were down at UW, if you were on the CCDC team or if you were doing any competitions. Did your group do that?
We did participate in some of those white hat hacking type of events, and so that's definitely something I could speak to and have experience in. I think, if you're in any kind of Dr. Chung's program, you know that it's not enough just to only simply do the curriculum and be done with it and graduate with your degree. You got to have those showing that you're going those extra miles to build that extra skill set. And I think it's the same while you're working too, that you're continuously developing your professional posture, so to speak, in those kind of things that where you can distinguish yourself when it comes to having to make the next move there.
And the other thing is, I'm assuming that you kept an active LinkedIn so that companies would know that you were continuing that self-learning.
Yes. Yeah. And actually I did. And I think when I showed my MITRE Corporation slide, I mentioned that I was contributing a lot to the open source community. This was actually a really great boon for me at the time, because not only can I update my LinkedIn with just what I was doing in kind of a synopsis format, I could literally link to my GitHub contributions page, and you can see like any recruiter or even the hiring manager or engineering manager in the next company can actually click into there and see the code that I've written and contributed to, the number of commits I've provided to there, and review the quality of my code, and it's all right there. So even I think even if you're not writing your code in the open source, I think having something that you can reference easily and point to, and having some concrete evidence of your skill set is a very important thing.
Thank you, because we want to keep promoting that. Our students are very busy, they're working, they've got families, the whole 9 yards. One other thing I do want to mention, earlier this year, Jenny Ju and I were back at the NSA for the Centers of Academic Excellence meeting, and Dr. Vinny Nestler from San Bernardino University of California actually reviewed the impact of how many tasks in certain cybersecurity job roles could be replaced by AI. And no position was replaced by AI. The tasks changed the workload. And so the comment that he made is AI will not replace you. People who know how to use AI will.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same story with any kind of major advancements in automation or process improvements. So it's the people who are able to utilize those things, who understand those systems, who are able to implement and integrate with those systems are going to be the next jobs. And I think like this is I always tell my junior engineers on my team, like, I'm not looking for code monkeys. I'm looking for engineers. So somebody who can do critical thinking, problem solving. I think when I first started in this work in school, I had this like misconception that programming is just about like being a wizard at whatever platform you're writing in and knowing all the kind of cool syntax tricks and stuff. It has nothing to do with that. It's much more important that you can take a set of sometimes ambiguous requirements and negotiate them into a working solution. And that's what I consider as engineering. So I don't think, I don't think that part of it is going to be replaced very soon.
Yeah, it's that critical thinking piece that's really key. And in January, I think it's January, Kina, we're going to have someone who really impressed me on her knowledge of AI. You might want to listen to her too. I think you'd find her engaging. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, William, thank you for your presentation. Also, I need some kind of sharing your experience. As I know, you didn't study computer science for your bachelor degree program. Then if you can share why you choose to computer science, then because you didn't have a computer science background, what was good, what was not good. Also, your graduate experience, also what kind of things you added a value to yourself to go to the minor. So if you share those story, go back to the 15 or 16 years ago, I know at that times, to me, it looks like you hit the bottom and you made something now. So if you share that story, great. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I almost put those in my slides too. So my undergraduate degree was in communications and journalism. And yeah, this is, 15, 20 years ago at this point. And the curriculum at the time was still very heavily based around print journalism. Can you even imagine still that you're learning how to write newspaper articles, right? Like, and even at the time, it's already long gone. Like that, people are like sitting and reading newspaper articles. Everyone's already only like, getting their news from websites. It's already it's updated daily throughout the day. It's not, you don't just get your news dumped once in the morning anymore. It's constant. The news cycle is 24/7 now, and these days even more so with social media and what have you. So even at that time, I was experiencing this scenario where my education was not really necessarily aligned with what the real world was, and maybe this some kind of parallel with learning how to write code with and now generative AI is able to write code itself. But there were still many my my classmates who were still successful in getting into the industry because they're already ahead of the curve. They're writing blogs on websites. They're already meeting those expectations of the current industry. At the time, I was, my age an adult, but mentally not mature at any by any stretch of imagination. And so I did not have that kind of initiative to pursue it that way. And I struggled to find gainful employment for a long time after I graduated my undergraduate degree. This is sort of the rock bottom that Dr. Chung is mentioning. And, through some networking, I came to find Dr. Chung's program at the University of Washington, Tacoma, and thought that it could be a good opportunity to try a different career path. I think the takeaway from this story is that even if your background is not technical, like you didn't have a STEM type of upbringing all the way through high school and your undergrad, and you were like, one of your top science or math or computing performers in your school or whatever. I think if you apply yourself, that again, it's not about learning all those crazy algorithms and learning the very niche science around the computer science. There are certainly jobs that do that, but in my experience, I'm a web developer, a full stack developer, and I'm very biased from that point of view. But very few people are actually doing that kind of deep technical science type of work and that's usually what you cover in academia in the curriculum. It's much more about the problem solving and figuring out what's the right thing to do, and then applying that to write some code to achieve that. So yeah, I hope that addressed what you're looking for, Dr. Chung.
Yes. I wanted some story with you. When I met him, he said he's the journalism. Then he explained that he has to write the article that fifth grade student can understand. As I told him, whether you remember or not, that's your strength. You and I, when submitted a paper, the paper was accepted without any revision. That means what? So he has the good writing skill because of that. When you write the technical paper, that is related to OAuth at that time. Then the famous conference, ACM, that time's Ally Research in IT, they accepted a paper without any revision. That was the only one paper in my life. All of a paper, always I have to have a revision and then I have to submit again. Except, yeah, that's why even some student here, your background is not computer science. It does not mean you are not losing that. Those experience will complement you to be successful. His case. Okay, I want to stop
Absolutely.
it. Yes. Kina, now give this a chance to all of our students. Anybody who are more interested in there. Also, there is a comment. If we want an AI guy from your company, if you know anybody who is doing healthcare AI, introduce us. Also, we want to have an invite to the talk. Okay,
Sure.
Tina, now, yeah, your turn. Yes.
I want to have a question to you, William.
Okay.
Could you share with us about your biggest challenge you have faced in your career and how you overcame it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started working at the MITRE Corporation, everything was new. I'm learning things like just by virtue of being there in that spot and just from osmosis of information, I'm just my learning leaps and bounds. And I was very lucky to have a very good project manager at the time to also cultivate my learning experience. And so that it was amazing for those first 2 years. At some point I hit some kind of inflection point where it's now I'm getting a little comfortable. I kind of get in like a little bit of niche or a groove, so to speak. I'm able to get what I needed to get done, but I started to feel myself not growing in that same aspect. And uh, I think that was like kind of the toughest part of my career, where it's like understanding that like I was hitting that area, and sure I could have stayed gainfully employed there and gone through the motions and just continue to take my paycheck, but I was honestly like pretty unhappy with like that situation. And so I think that was the hardest part, making that leap. Like, even though like they didn't lay me off or fire me, but like knowing that like, okay, I kind of need to rock my own boat to get into a situation where I'm gonna be back on that learning curve and get out of my comfort zone and get a new set of skills and stay competitive and continue to cultivate these transferable skills. I needed to make some kind of change. And I I wasn't thinking that at the time. Like in hindsight, that's like what it looks like. I was just kind of unhappy. Then a recruiter reached out to me out of nowhere, and then I don't know what came over me to even entertain that recruiter's request, but I gave him a call, and then the rest is history. So I think that might be a little bit more luck than anything, but I think the advice that I can impart on other people is that like be on the lookout for when you're starting to get a little too comfortable, and make sure you're continually pushing yourself out of your comfort zone there. This job, this industry, it's not that you can just get your degree and then you're set. Like, you have to continuously learn, you have to continuously update your skill set and learn new things. And so yeah, that's the only way to succeed in this.
Oh, thank you. So anyone have any other question? So I think I will have another question to you. Like, do you have any advice to, I mean, like, for students who start their career, like how to build a strong foundation? Maybe if someone gonna build a strong foundation of expertise. Yeah, I think that is my question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think whenever I interview potential candidates for our company and even at my previous company, I'm looking for those critical thinking skills. I'm not so much looking for like, okay, I give you this kind of toy programming exercise and you are able to solve it. Like, that is the bare minimum, right? You do have to be able to satisfy the programming challenges or questions or whatever you get, but that's the bare minimum. But we get dozens of those, and then from there you have to still choose somebody. What I like to see is that you're given this kind of technical challenge and you are able to apply your critical thinking skills to uh, find the productive result out of there. And so it can be a class project, it can be a project outside of school, it can be some kind of competition event that Morgan mentioned. Any of these things are great things to be able to talk about. And also, interviewers can definitely feel your passion as well. If you're talking about these things and you're very engaged about it, I like to call it ownership. If it sounds like you're like you demonstrate ownership of this project, that you're very proud of it, and that you can really feel those vibes, and that will go a long way.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, William. I have another question. So you said you work with the IAM and OAuth, right? What's the most interesting piece of it that you like love about it or worked on it?
Yeah. So the best part about it is in any OAuth or OIDC or IAM system, there are multiple moving parts. It's never just one web server. You're just writing code that's executed line by line. There's multiple different web servers all talking to each other in different ways. So even though I was like a very junior engineer at the time, just out of school, I had this opportunity to work at a very large architectural scale. And I think that's something that you don't often get if you're just kind of cranking out widgets and just writing, code that to make a UI do something or whatever. And front end JavaScript code is what I'm thinking, where you could write thousands of lines of front end JavaScript code, but it's to just do this one thing in an SPA application. But this work in the IAM space gave me much better insight into the overall client server web architecture, HTTP protocols, also even in various encoding systems, all sorts of like much more in-depth technical things that have helped me serve, like I said, that my engineering skill set, not so much my coding skill set. So I think that's my favorite thing about having started off in that space.
And I guess should everyone use Okta for their companies?
Well, I can say that we do, and it's highly convenient, and they have some really good engineers over there that when I was on the identity services team, we interacted with them very closely to integrate with their system. So that's above my pay grade to answer, but yeah, they make a good product.
Yeah, it's like one click and you access everything that you have access to. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question.
Okay, we have another question from Harrison. He said that many of students are also transiting from other fields to CS and AI. Where should someone start if they want to improve their technical skills fast?
Yeah. So it's not enough just to do the curriculum, because just look around your own class. These are your classmates, but these are also your competition for jobs, and not even just only in this classroom, but think about how many other hundreds or thousands of other programs out there that are all turning out potential new applicants for these limited amount of positions. So just doing the coursework is never going to be enough. So whatever personal project, and it doesn't even have to be a personal thing. I'm sure that if I know Dark Chunk, there's going to be plenty of opportunities to do these kind of extracurricular activities. I don't know what they are at CU, but I'm sure there are some there. And engaging yourself in those. I know everyone's got lives and it's busy, but that's kind of the thing that will. I think you would need to just consider that as part of your education in order to incorporate that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in AI, start an AI project or join one, and there's nothing better to learn and learn faster at than just trying to do something and achieve some kind of result.
Thank you. Harrison, is that Graham answers your question? Okay, it's great. So anyone else have any question?
I have another question, William. If you would teach your kids tech, which tech would you teach first? IAM, AI, healthcare tech, or
That's a good question. I mean, I think even without intentionally teaching them, like my kids, they're 6 and 4 now. They're already talking to Siri on their iPad, like, "Hey Siri, blah blah blah." Like they're already gonna grow up with generative AI and these kind of AI systems. It's like it's just so integrated in the fabric of their being now. So by the time they're I said Siri, my phone just answered. But by the time they get to the age of higher education, I don't think AI is going to even be a thing anymore. It's not even going to be a term. Like it's such a blanket term now, even that there's going to be subfields in there that that we don't even imagine right now. That who knows what it's going to be. I guess if your question is like if I was to advise somebody going into it right now, I think you definitely do need to understand it at a high level. That it being AI and generative AI, you don't need to know like how all the formulas work and how all the neural networks and all the various like data mining techniques or what have you. You don't need to know those at a very, very like algorithmic, like mathematic level. But I think you need to be able to at least have an elevator pitch level of understanding of what those things are. Because if you do end up working or applying to a position on a team where that is the project, you don't necessarily have to develop the algorithm. You're just going to leverage a tool probably to do it. You're just going to plug in some kind of tool to do it, but you need to know what that thing is doing, what kind of biases it might have, what are the constraints, what are the pitfalls, these kind of things you have to be able to speak intelligibly about in order to, I think, convince an interviewer.
Yeah, I guess what you said, like if AI in the future is like fully integrated in our lives and seamless, it'll be just like the internet. We don't even need to know how to implement the internet. Is you just use it.
That's right. There's multiple levels of abstraction. I think the way I would think of it now is like when I was first starting in computer science, we didn't have to learn assembly. Like I took an assembly course, but I didn't have to know how to code assembly by the time I had to work. You can use one of these higher order languages and just kind of almost write plain English compared to assembly, what it looks like. There's going to be the next progression of that where you just need to know how to do the correct prompt engineering for your code AI assistant to make sure that it get the right results, but also you need to be able to review the code that the AI spits out to know if it's correct or not. This is a little morbid, but one of my middle school teachers used to tell us a story about back in the day, in the military, the mortar teams, they had to calculate by hand the trajectories of the mortar that they shot. Yeah. But as soon as they started using calculators, the rate of friendly fires went up because they would just punch in the numbers. They wouldn't know if the number was right or wrong. They set the mortar and they shoot them backwards. So it's kind of like, this is kind of the pitfall I see with the AI tooling, with the people who just come in and just like take whatever wholesale that the generative AI tool spits out. You can't do that. You still need to know whether or not it's correct. And that part, I think, is still some amount of engineering expertise is required.
I guess your middle school teacher like teaching us like that's how evolution takes course.
So maybe we don't have any other question. Thank you. Thank Graham and everyone for great question. I think we have a fantastic talk today. And thank you. Sam, want to say something? Oh, Sam want to say bye.
Thank you so much, William. If you come to this area, definitely I can buy coffee for you. Also, you like a beer, we can have a beer time too. Also, if we are making a lot of money, we always accept a small donation of a scholarship. Do not forget it. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you
Thanks
all
for the conversation, William. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.